So when we look at this is a really good example, if you come around this side, of a young tree that really needs just one snip. Can you tell me where?
That branch going up there.
Which way? You'll have to touch it. That one. Right, yeah, well, you can really see it here, and this is a classic broadleaf response here. You see, the presence of that branch has actually forced this one to move. And so that's deformed the shape of that trunk. Now, the best thing for me to do right now is to come in and go, right, get rid of you. You can go down there. Chop you up a little bit more. There you go, because we're successional agroforesters. It's all about the mulch. And now that's it. I won't touch that. Now, coming back to your point about what's next, well, we come up here to where, like this here, right there, is the dominant. That's the lead of the tree. But look at out here. You've got these other ones. Now, each one of those has what's called an apical meristem. So each one of those thinks it's the boss. And it's got its own mind, effectively. And they will undermine each other, even though they're all. It's like having different heads on the same body, and they all want to get one thing, and that's canopy dominance. And they'll work against each other to do that, right? And they'll deform the tree while doing so.
Sounds a bit like that permaculture thing you were talking about.
Which one?
Everyone trying to get a slice of the same pie. And deforming the head.
Yeah, even though the sky is the biggest thing there is, right? Yeah.
So Darren, you wouldn't take off that little one because it's already gone past that point.
No, good point.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I try and use as general rules of thumb when I'm pruning. For a start, and someone told me the name of this once. One of the well-trained people here might know it. There's a name for different, or there's a term for different types of branches. So there's two types of branches ostensibly. There's one that will stay and one that will ultimately self-exclude. Now look at that branch there and the size of the trunk above it. It's made no difference to the size of the trunk. Look at this one and the size of the trunk above that. Right, so that if we didn't do anything about it, that'd be the equivalent of those being retained. It will be this big branch that comes out here, and we'll have this deformed tree. Well, that's subjective, but it will have this deformed tree as a result. So you've got to pick your branches. The other point I'd make, so that I could come back in a year or two, and that will probably self-exclude. Right, it'll just drop off. You can already see the leaves on it are probably gone anyway. There's no vigour in them. The other thing is trying not to prune too much. And the general rule of thumb that we say is around about 1/5 at a time. So if you take off more than 1/5, and it varies according to species, but let's just be cautious on this. 1/5 at a time, because if you take off more than that, then you compromise the solar panels, right? So the plant, me doing that has just taken off all of those solar panels. That's a lot of energy that the plant is, it's like taking solar panels off your roof for a battery. Right. This is a growing battery, but by the same token, it's got to recover from me just doing that. So if I start getting up here and go, oh yeah, I don't like that one, I don't like that one, and all of a sudden you end up with 3 leaves left on it, well, don't be surprised if the tree dies because it's run out of energy, right? It's just too vulnerable. So a little bit, if you're going to do it, come back, like I don't know what this tree is or whatever, but I'll probably come back to this in a year's time. You do have time with these things. Some species it'll be 6 months, some it'll be 12 months, 2 years. You'll get to learn that, and just come back a little bit often and just give a little snip here and a little snip there. Once you get your eye in, and you've always got these in your back pocket, because it's much easier to do it with these than it is with these, or with saws or whatever. So if you can get around with something that you can carry around in your back pocket and just come up and go, oh yep, that, as you're casually going by, or you're going for your morning walk, and your morning walk might be a bit of a pruning walk, right? Chop, 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 done. But just don't take off any more than that when you're doing your form pruning in particular. Then, so we'll leave that away. What I'm interested in next is seeing what's going to happen up here. Are any of these going to do what has happened at your place? Is any of these going to go, okay, I've established, I'm about to lay the gauntlet, so I'm going to put my energy up, and this one goes, hey mate, your brother or sister, I'm not going to let you do that. So the two of them, off they go, and you get 2 leaders or triple leaders, and then you have to decide which one to take out.
You get it like, I've done that, and then chosen 1 leader, and it looks like that's tree's just deformed now, isn't it?
No, it may well straighten itself out. It depends on what else is happening around it, because remember, it's still like when you fell this tree when it's this big, what you're doing right here will be this little pithy little ring right in the middle of it all, right? So it's still got a bit of time. If you've got other trees around it which are coming in and influencing it this way and this way and this way, then that'll help. But as a single stem out here and it's open, this thing here, its biggest enemy is this a macadamia? Yeah, so it's already, you can see it's leaning that way. It already knows that's there, right? So it's pushing itself out. Look how most of its leaves are on that side, not on this side. So it's not investing energy in there because this is where the sun is. So what I would suggest to you is that, well, for a couple of things, make sure that when you do that cut that you don't leave too much behind. Like even me looking at that, if I did that, I might just come back and just go a little bit closer. Right, that's a better cut for there, right?
So you don't need to worry about that 45 you're talking
No,
about.
that's okay. That's fine. As long as you're not parallel with the trunk, just a bit of an angle so the water can shed off. There's a lot of sap flow in this tree, so that'll heal pretty quick because it's so young. There's no heartwood in this yet. What was I going to say? So with this, just make sure that if you are going to snip, get in nice and close, because if you leave like a little nib there, it's still going to deflect the other away. So do that. But otherwise, it's going to be what goes around it. But it should straighten up. Okay. Now, the other thing to consider is wind direction. So if you've got, a lot of you will get to a point you've got these two here, I would predict will probably have a fight amongst each other. This one here is already dominant, right? It's getting, so north is that way, it's got shade there coming through, so the sun's going up there, coming down there, right? So it's already that one and that one. Look at those, right? So they're sort of, they're reflecting, in a sense, the light that's already available to it. So now, if I was to keep either of those, that one is obviously straighter and in line with the main body of the tree. So if I was to, let's say I had this one, and this had been bitten off by a bird or whatever, which one am I going to go with? Why would you go with that and not that?
You're saying that one's already a bit higher.
Yeah, but what about from a wind perspective? What sector is the wind coming from? The most powerful or prevailing winds?
The powerful and prevailing winds here are coming from the south.
Right. Okay. In this case, it's got, so that's not as big a concern. But let's say that was twisted around, and you had the choice between north and south. You'd probably go with south. The reason for that is because that's stronger than that.
Yeah.
Right? That's not going to break. That's going to break. Okay, if that was twisted around that way, right? So you've got it. It's the same with grafted trees. Whenever we plant grafted trees, we always plant the graft bow in the direction of the prevailing wind direction. Because if you have it in the other way, then the chance is when that tree's young, a cockatoo, something sits on it, windy day, snap, down she comes. Whereas if it's in the opposite direction and it's a windy day and something's on there or whatever, it's got less chance of breaking. They're small things, but they just make common sense. And we've seen that you can use the wind to sort of straighten it up, right? Because that flagging is continuous to hold that up, right? I think in this case, I would be ultimately, I think that will ultimately go, and these two will ultimately go. Perhaps, they may well exclude. This might get a burst of energy. Something else that you can do, of course, is this. A little bit of horticulture, right? You can nip it in the bud, right? Apical dominance has just disappeared because I just cut it off. So we can get really fancy, right?
Yeah.
So you can do a bit of that. Now that's another way of playing with it.